Left of the box. So I cover a lot of news about Doug Ford. Of course I do. I live in Ontario, and a lot of his policies has a direct impact on me. And it's just, again, it's so frustrating. The things he does, the little workarounds, the money he spends, how he spends it. But then there's more that the public often doesn't hear about that makes how much of a monster he is so much more visible. So we have Doug Ford tweeting out, they'll try to find any way to keep drug sites near schools and daycares. And he's quote tweeting a Globe and Mail piece saying Ontario's bill on supervised drug use sites may breach charter rights, legal experts say. Like, who's they, for one thing? Try to find any way to keep drug sites near schools and daycares. No, like, again, who's they? And this is about respecting people's charter rights. Like, if you're breaching it, it's not people just looking for some random way to open up a supervised consumption site right next to an elementary school. That's not how it is. Not to mention, him and his brother used to be involved with the drug trade. Not to mention, Doug Ford has also made alcohol now accessible across the street from any high school in convenience stores. So he's very picky and choosy over which ones he likes and which ones he doesn't. And just somebody pointing out, David pointing out, you mean respect constitutional rights, right? Yeah. The thing is that he's so wanting to fast track this too. So here's Zoe Dodd just pointing out, after a bill is introduced, normally a hearing goes from a second hearing to a committee. This bill today means that they'll skip to the third without a public hearing. With the bike lanes, they kept public hearings to a day, but for safe consumption sites, they're scrapping the public hearing altogether. So Doug Ford is so desperate to get rid of these supervised consumption sites. He's fast tracking it. So not healthcare issues, not helping people find a family doctor, not, making wait times in emergency rooms less, not making housing affordable. He's not doing anything to fast track help for that. But he wants to fast track shutting down supervised consumption sites, something that literally saves lives. Diana Chan McNally, who I've featured on my channel plenty of times before, she's quite an outspoken advocate, says Bill 223 will kill people. Doug Ford knows this and knows they will be slapped with the Charter's challenge on violating the rights to life. Nevertheless, they're expediting the closure of safe consumption sites before the House rises on December 12th. The bill could be passed this week. So, wants to fast track this. But it's not just that. So he's disregarding the lives that will be lost with the shutdown of these supervised consumption sites. But then there's also the bike lane issue. So Laura Babcock does her own podcast, The O Show, Current Affairs, talks a lot about politics and stuff of that sort. She says, what fresh hell is this? Rip out bike lanes at a huge cost to taxpayers to signal you're winning a fake war on the car, make Ontario's streets dangerous for all people who use bike lanes, then outlaw being held accountable for dangerous roads. So here he was whining that he might breach people's charter of rights, but here he is saying that he wants to ban lawsuits against province if cyclists are hurt or killed on the streets where bike lanes were removed. It's not the first time he's done something like this, because back when COVID first hit the long-term care homes and lots of people died who didn't need to die, he passed legislation to make it so you couldn't sue the owners of those homes for any harm done during COVID. That was eventually, I believe, overturned. But here he is again, just saying, nope, you can't sue us. So we're going to make this far more dangerous for you. Potentially, people are going to die because these safe places to cycle will no longer be there, and cars will have to compete with bikes in the traffic of Toronto. But if anything happens after we've spent millions of dollars removing bike lanes that cost millions of dollars to put in, well, you're not allowed to then get mad at us if anything bad happens. And we're going to push through legislation to make sure you can't hold us accountable for it. Absolutely disgusting human being. And this gets far less media attention. This type of maneuvering he does gets far less media attention than, when he puts beer in alcohol in convenience stores and all these other things. His battle with Donald Trump right now over the tariffs and whatnot. The real world harm he's inflicting on people never gets stated enough in the media. The amount of social murder Doug Ford is responsible for is off the charts, but he's never held accountable for it. So here is Chris Glover. He's an NDP MP. Sorry, it's just his name together looks like Chris G. Lover, NDP. He's a lover of the NDP. No, Chris Glover, NDP. And he's an MPP for Spadina Fork York and critic for democratic reform and technology. So Ford government passes Bill 212 with an amendment to strip Ontarians the right to take this government to court if anyone is injured or killed because of the removal of bike lanes. This is not just about bike lanes, it's an attack on our democratic rights.
We're at Queen's Park, and the government just passed an amendment to the bike lane bill to strip Ontarians of the right to take this government to court if anyone is injured or killed because of the removal of those bike lanes. So this is not just about bike lanes. This is about our democratic right to take the government to court when they commit certain actions. It's the same legislative tool that they used with Ontario Place. With the Ontario Place bill, this government stripped us of our right to take the government to court if any of their ministers or any government agents committed acts of misfeasance, which means that used their government power in making the Ontario Place deal. It's an attack on our democratic rights. This is not just about bike lanes. This is about our democratic rights, and we need to fight back.
Here is Doug Ford responding to a question about this. And again, you're going to see just how callous this asshole is. He's an asshole just full of calluses.
Morning, Premier. Lane Harrison, CBC News. Your government talks a lot about reducing gridlock so people can spend more time with their families, but 6 people in Toronto will never spend time with their families again because they were killed riding bikes this year. How do you explain the amendment that protects the province from lawsuits around injuries or deaths after you remove bike lanes to the families of those dead cyclists?
Well, again, my heart goes out to the families, and I'm so sorry that happens. It's just like I'm sorry when people get in car accidents and motorcycle accidents and so on and so forth. And, that's terrible.
I'm so sorry that, people might die as a consequence of some of the things that I'm doing. But, people die every day, so whatever.
I keep everyone safe. I want to keep everyone safe across the roads. But do you know who I want to keep safe too? When the firefighters jump in their trucks and they're trying to go down University and they're jammed behind traffic, they can't get there to save lives, or they're trying to go down Bloor Street and it's absolutely backed up from here to Timbuktu.
Bike lanes have nothing to do with that. There's traffic in Toronto that needs to be tackled. And do you know what would help with traffic congestion? Fewer cars on the road. It's not these bike lanes that are causing the issue. It's that Toronto is a traffic gridlock nightmare, and a lot more needs to be done to make that a drivable city. And the best way to make it a drivable city is by making it an accessible city by better transit and bike lanes.
Or Yonge Street, that doesn't make sense at all. That's who I want to save lives for. I want to save everyone's life. Don't get me wrong that, bike riders are
Again, the amount of social murder this asshole is responsible for. No, he doesn't give a damn about people's lives.
important. Go on the secondary roads that run parallel, a few feet away from the existing roads.
I'm sorry, but please tell me where in Toronto these secondary roads, a few feet away from roads, are. Where are these secondary roads you speak of? I've lived in Toronto. When you get to the downtown congested area, there are no secondary roads. Unless you're talking about alleys, which you shouldn't be riding your bike down for hazardous reasons. But there aren't secondary roads in Toronto. They all get gridlocked. All of them.
Be careful out there. And we're going to get stuff going, moving. And that's what we're doing. Simple as that.
Simple as that. Yeah. So what? Doesn't even really respond to, the idea that People are going to die because of this and other things that he's constantly putting through. He's making life so much worse for the people in this province.